I'm Dr. Elena Vance, 29, female, and my family missed my medical school graduation because they said a cruise was more important. That was the official reason, the one they gave me over the phone with all the casual indifference of someone canceling a coffee date. The real reason, the one that shattered something deep inside me, came a few seconds later from my own mother's lips. "We didn't think you'd actually make it." That single sentence was the culmination of a lifetime of being the other daughter, the one whose dreams were always a little too big, a little too inconvenient for the tidy world my parents had built around my younger sister, Chloe. To understand the profound sting of those words, you have to understand the landscape of my childhood. Our family wasn't a war zone. It was a quiet, suburban kingdom where Chloe was the perpetually reigning princess, and I was, at best, a lady-in-waiting. Chloe was bright, bubbly, and beautiful, with ambitions that were easily digestible and, more importantly, photogenic. From the age of 16, she declared she wanted to be an influencer, a star of the digital age. My parents, Brenda and Mark, didn't just support this, they invested in it. They saw her dream as a tangible, sparkling thing. I remember the Christmas Chloe turned 17. Under the tree was a professional vlogging camera worth more than my first car, a ring light that could illuminate a football field, and a brand new laptop powerful enough to edit feature films. "It's an investment in her future," my dad, Mark, had said, beaming as Chloe squealed and unboxed her treasures. A few months later, when I was drowning in organic chemistry and studying for the MCAT, the gateway exam to medical school, I cautiously asked for help paying for a prep course. It was expensive, but it was known for getting results. My mother, Brenda, didn't even look up from the brochure she was studying for a trip to Paris she and Chloe were planning. "Elena, honey, that's a lot of money to throw at something that's such a long shot," she'd said, her voice gentle but firm. "Your father and I think it's better to be realistic. This doctor thing, it's so demanding. Are you sure you're cut out for it?" I ended up working 2 part-time jobs all summer to pay for that course myself, studying on my lunch breaks and late into the night, fueled by lukewarm coffee and a stubborn refusal to prove them right. This pattern repeated itself relentlessly. When Chloe wanted to take a gap year to find her brand in Bali, my parents remortgaged the house. When I won a major scholarship for my undergraduate degree in biology, an achievement that saved them tens of thousands of dollars, my dad patted me on the shoulder and said, "That's nice, dear. Now you won't have to worry us about loans." The celebration dinner that night was at Chloe's favorite restaurant because she'd had a really tough week. After a sponsored post, received some negative comments. The only person who ever seemed to see me was my Uncle Ben. He was my mother's older brother, but they were cut from entirely different cloths. Where my mom was cautious and obsessed with appearances, Uncle Ben was bold, loud, and celebrated effort as much as victory. He'd built a successful construction company from the ground up and had no patience for what he called the cult of mediocrity. He was the one who bought me my first real microscope in high school. He'd call me every Sunday during my undergrad years, not to ask if I had a boyfriend or if I was eating enough, but to ask what I was learning. He'd listen, truly listen, as I rambled on about cellular mitosis or the Krebs cycle, his genuine fascination a balm to my often lonely soul. "You've got the grit, kid," he'd always say before hanging up. "Don't you ever let them convince you otherwise." That grit was tested to its absolute limit in medical school. It was a crucible designed to break people, a relentless gauntlet of sleepless nights, crushing pressure, and emotional turmoil. There were times I'd be in the library for 36 hours straight, my vision blurring, my mind a fog of medical terminology. In those moments of doubt, when I felt like I was about to splinter into a million pieces, I would think of my parents' gentle, persistent disbelief. I would picture Chloe's effortlessly perfect life, curated for her thousands of followers. And instead of breaking, I would get angry. That anger became my fuel. Every exam I aced, every complex diagnosis I made, every rotation I survived was a silent act of defiance. I wasn't just doing it for myself or for my future patients. I was doing it to prove that their version of me was wrong. Their limited expectations were a cage I refused to live in. So, when I finally saw the finish line, when the date for the graduation ceremony was set, it felt like more than just a ceremony. It was a coronation. It was the moment I could finally show them the tangible proof of my struggle, culmination of all those years they dismissed. I imagined the moment they would see me walk across that stage, the velvet hood of a doctor of medicine placed over my shoulders. I thought, foolishly, that seeing would finally be believing. I thought that for one day, just one, the kingdom might finally recognize its other daughter. The final few months of medical school were a blur of board exams, residency applications, and a kind of bone-deep exhaustion that felt permanent. The finish line was in sight, but it was uphill, and the air was thin. My classmates and I moved through the hospital corridors like ghosts, powered by caffeine and the sheer terror of failure. Yet, beneath the fatigue, a current of excitement was building. We were about to become doctors. The weight of that title, the responsibility it carried, was both terrifying and exhilarating. I secured a residency position in emergency medicine at a prestigious hospital a few states away. It was my top choice, a dream come true. When I got the acceptance email, I sank into my desk chair and cried for a solid 10 minutes, not from sadness, but from a tidal wave of relief so overwhelming it felt like grief. I had done it. Against all odds, against the quiet chorus of doubt that had been the background music of my life, I had actually done it. The first person I called was Uncle Ben. He answered on the second ring, his booming voice instantly recognizable. "Tell me something good, Doc," he said, already knowing. He'd been my sounding board through the entire stressful interview process. "I got it, Uncle Ben. I got the residency," I sobbed, laughing through the tears. His roar of celebration was so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "I knew it. I never doubted you for a second, Elena. We have to celebrate. I'm taking you out for the best steak in the city, you hear me?" His pride was so pure, so unconditional, it felt like sunshine breaking through a storm cloud. My next call was harder. I took a deep breath, steeling myself, and dialed my parents' number. My dad answered, his voice distracted. I could hear the television in the background. "Hey, Dad, it's me." "Lainey, how are you? Everything okay?" His tone was one of mild alarm, as if the only reason I would call on a weeknight was an emergency. "Everything's great, actually. I just wanted to let you know that I got my residency placement. I'm going to be in the ER." "Oh, well, that's great, honey. Good for you," he said. The enthusiasm was noticeably forced. "ER, huh? Isn't that very stressful?" "It is, but it's what I've always wanted," I said, my own excitement beginning to dim. "Anyway, the graduation date is official. It's Saturday, May 18th. The ceremony starts at 10 a.m. I'll be sending out the formal invitations with all the details, but I wanted to make sure you guys saved the date." There was a pause. I heard him muffle the phone and say something to my mother in the background. Her faint, indistinct reply was followed by more murmuring. My stomach tightened. "Dad." "Yeah, still here," he said, coming back on the line. "May 18th, you said. A Saturday, okay. We'll have to check the calendar. Things are a little up in the air that month." Up in the air? My medical school graduation was up in the air? I felt a familiar cold prickle of disappointment. "Okay," I said, keeping my voice even. "Well, just let me know. It would mean a lot to me if you were there." Of course. We'll do our best." "Hey, did you hear about Chloe? Her new video on sustainable fashion just hit 50,000 views. Her agent is talking about a potential brand deal with a big company. We're all so proud of her." And just like that, the conversation pivoted. For the next 10 minutes, I listened to a detailed account of Chloe's triumphs, her follower counts, her clever editing techniques. I made the appropriate noises of encouragement, the knot in my stomach twisting with every word. By the time I hung up, the joy of my residency acceptance had evaporated, replaced by a weary sense of resignation. It was always like this. My concrete, life-altering achievements were abstract and vaguely worrying to them. while Chloe's fleeting digital successes were treated like national holidays. A week later, the formal invitations arrived from the printer, thick, creamy cardstock with the university seal embossed in gold. I addressed one to Uncle Ben with a flourish, adding a personal note on the back. I addressed the second one to Mr. and Mrs. Mark Vance. As I sealed the envelope, a wave of foolish optimism washed over me. Maybe seeing it in print, this official, tangible thing would make it real for them. Maybe they just needed to see my name, followed by the words Doctor of Medicine, to finally understand. I decided to call them again a few weeks before the ceremony, just to follow up. It was a Tuesday evening. This time, my mother answered. "Hi, Mom. Elena, IW. As just thinking about you," she said, her voice surprisingly bright. "We got your invitation. It's very handsome." "Thanks," I said, a sliver of hope flickering to life. "So, I was just calling to see if you'd made travel plans. I can help book a hotel if you need." "Oh, well, that's actually what I needed to talk to you about," she began, and the manufactured brightness in her voice instantly sounded an alarm in my head. "There's been a bit of a scheduling conflict." My heart sank. "A conflict, what is it?" "Well, Chloe has been working so hard, just burning the candle at both ends. Your father and I decided she needed a real vacation, a proper break. And we found this absolutely incredible, last-minute deal on a Caribbean cruise. It's all-inclusive, 7 days. The problem is, the ship leaves on Friday the 17th. I was silent. I couldn't form words. A cruise. A last-minute cruise for the perpetually on vacation Chloe was their scheduling conflict. "Elena, are you there?" "The ship leaves the day before my graduation," I said, my voice flat and distant. "I know, the timing is just awful," she said with a sigh that was pure performance. "We tried to see if we could change it, but it's one of those non-refundable, non-transferable deals. You know how it is. We're just gutted that we're going to miss your big day." Gutted, the word hung in the air between us, a blatant, insulting lie. They weren't gutted. They were indifferent. The truth was sitting right there, unspoken but screamingly loud. They had booked a vacation that overlapped with the single most important day of my academic life because, in the landscape of their priorities, I was a distant, secondary thought. The doubt wasn't just about whether I could do it. It was about whether it was worth their time to even pay attention. And in that moment, I knew. They weren't coming. I held the phone to my ear, listening to the dead air, the hum of the connection stretching across the distance between my apartment and their world. A cruise. The words echoed in the sudden, vast silence of my mind. It wasn't a family emergency, not an unavoidable act of God. It was a choice. They had actively chosen a vacation over me. "So you're not coming," I stated. It wasn't a question. It was the grim acceptance of a verdict I'd been subconsciously expecting my entire life. "We feel just terrible about it, honey," my mother's voice oozed with synthetic sympathy. "Chloe has just been under so much pressure, and this was the only week the deal was available. We'll be thinking of you, though. We'll toast to you from the ship." A toast? From a cruise ship in the Caribbean. The image was so absurd, so deeply insulting, it almost made me laugh. I felt a strange and terrible clarity descend upon me, a cold fury that burned away the hurt and left something hard and unyielding in its place. "When did you book it?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "Oh, a few weeks ago, I suppose," she said breezily. "It was such a steal, we had to jump on it." A few weeks ago, they had received my formal, expensive invitation, and then, after receiving it, they had booked their trip. The lie about the timing, about it being a last-minute thing, was just another casual layer of disrespect. They hadn't forgotten. They hadn't made a mistake. They had weighed my milestone against a vacation, and my milestone had lost. "Why, Mom?" I asked, the question barely a whisper. "Why would you do that?" There was a sigh on the other end of the line, the weary sound of a parent forced to explain something to a difficult child. And then came the words that would be seared into my memory forever. "Honestly, Elena," she said, her tone shifting from feigned sympathy to frank, almost cruel honesty. The deposit was non-refundable, and, well, we didn't think you'd actually make it this far. We didn't want to get our hopes up. The world tilted. The air left my lungs in a silent rush as if I'd been physically struck. We didn't think you'd actually make it. It wasn't just that they had prioritized a cruise. It was that they had fundamentally, down to their very bones, not believed in me. My entire 8-year journey, the sleepless nights, the sacrifices, the debt, the sheer force of will it had taken to get here, had been, in their eyes, a fool's errand, a flight of fancy they never expected to land. The cruise wasn't the betrayal. The cruise was just a symptom of the disease. The real wound was their complete and utter lack of faith. I closed my eyes. I saw a highlight reel of my life. Me at the library until it closed, me politely declining party invitations to study, me consoling myself after a brutal exam, me paying for my own prep course while they planned Chloe's next adventure. All of it I had done alone. And I had done it in spite of them, not because of them. Something inside me snapped, not in a loud, dramatic way, but a quiet, clean break, the part of me that had spent a lifetime craving their approval, that had harbored a secret, foolish hope that one day I would do something impressive enough to earn it, simply died. It was over. There are 2 ceremonies, I said, my voice devoid of any emotion. It felt like I was floating outside my own body, watching a stranger speak. What was that, dear? My mother asked, confused by my non-response. The graduation. There's the smaller departmental ceremony on Saturday where they place the doctoral hood on you. That's the important one. Then there's the big, university-wide ceremony the next month, the one in the stadium with thousands of people. I paused, taking a steadying breath. Don't bother showing up to the ceremony next month. The silence that followed was different. It was stunned. I had never spoken to them like this before. I was always the peacekeeper, the one who swallowed her disappointment and kept smiling. Elena, that's not a very nice thing to say, my mother finally stammered. No, I agreed, a bitter smile touching my lips though she couldn't see it. It's not, but honestly, Mom, I don't think you'd actually come anyway. Enjoy your cruise. I ended the call before she could reply. I set my phone down on the counter with a quiet click. For a long moment, I just stood there in my small apartment kitchen, staring at the wall. I didn't cry. I didn't scream or throw anything. I just felt empty. A vast, hollowed-out space had opened up inside me where all that childish hope used to be. Then the emptiness began to fill with something else. It was a cold, hard resolve. I had made it. I had done it without their belief, and I would graduate without their presence. Their absence wouldn't be a sad, empty chair on the day of my triumph. It would be a symbol of my independence. Their disbelief had been the final, unwanted gift that had forged me into the person I was. I would walk across that stage alone, and for the first time, it wouldn't feel lonely. It would feel like freedom. The tears came later that night, not hot tears of anger, but slow, silent tears of mourning. I was mourning the parents I wished I had. The family I saw all around me, the ones who showed up with balloons and embarrassing signs and faces filled with pride for their children. I was mourning the little girl inside me who just wanted her mom and dad to say, "We are so proud of you," and actually mean it. I let myself grieve for her, for that impossible dream, and then I let her go. When I woke up the next morning, the sun was shining, and I had a residency to prepare for. I had a life to build, and I would build it myself. The day of my graduation arrived, draped in the brilliant, hopeful sunshine of mid-May. The university campus was buzzing, a joyous chaos of black robes, camera flashes, and families trying to navigate the crowded pathways. Everywhere I looked, I saw variations of the same scene. Proud fathers struggling with oversized bouquets, mothers wiping away tears, siblings jostling each other with affectionate shoves. The air was thick with a collective pride, so palpable you could almost taste it. And it made my own solitude feel like a physical presence, a shadow clinging to my shoulders. My friends, my comrades in the long war of medical school, were all enveloped by their families. I watched as Maria was swarmed by a dozen relatives from Puerto Rico, all talking at once, their love for her a loud, vibrant symphony. I saw Ken, a guy who projected an aura of unshakable stoicism, melt into a puddle as his elderly grandmother pinned a flower to his robe. I smiled, I offered congratulations, I took photos for them, but with each happy family I encountered, the ache in my chest grew a little sharper. I had my cap and gown, I had my honors cords, I had my name printed in the program, followed by those two magical letters, MD, but I didn't have my people. My phone remained silent, not a text, not a call. I imagined them on their cruise ship, sipping brightly colored drinks, the sound of a steel drum band in the background. Were they thinking of me as my mother had promised? For a fleeting, masochistic moment, I pictured them raising a glass. To Elena, my dad might say, before turning his attention back to the buffet. The thought was so pathetic it was almost comical. I found my assigned seat in the auditorium among the other graduates of the medical school. The man next to me, a future pediatrician named David, was nervously fidgeting with his program. "My whole family is up there," he whispered, gesturing to a packed row in the balcony. "My mom has been crying since 8 a.m. "That's really sweet," I said, forcing a smile. "Are your folks here?" he asked, his question innocent and friendly. "No," I replied, my voice even. "They couldn't make it." I offered no explanation, and thankfully the processional music started just then, saving me from any follow-up questions. We sat through speeches from the day. N and a distinguished alumnus. I listened to their words about duty, compassion, and the future of medicine, but my mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about the first time I dissected a human cadaver, the profound sense of awe and responsibility I felt. I was thinking about the first time I delivered a baby, the slippery, screaming miracle of it all. I was thinking about holding a dying patient's hand, offering what little comfort I could when medicine had nothing left to give. These were the moments that had made me. These were the things my parents couldn't see and would never understand. Then they began to call our names. One by one, my classmates walked across the stage, their names echoing through the grand hall. When the announcer called, "Elena Michelle Vance," my heart gave a painful thud. I stood up, my legs feeling strangely disconnected from my body, and walked toward the stage. The applause from the audience was a distant roar. My eyes scanned the crowd out of a deeply ingrained, foolish habit, searching for faces I knew I wouldn't find. As I knelt, the dean of medicine, a woman I deeply respected, placed the heavy, velvet-lined hood over my head. It settled onto my shoulders, a tangible weight, a symbol of everything I had endured. As she helped me rise, she looked me in the eye and said, "Congratulations, doctor. You've earned this." In that moment, looking into her face, which held nothing but sincere respect, something shifted. The cloud of self-pity that had been following me all day began to dissipate. She was right. I had earned this. Me. My work, my tears, my sleepless nights, my stubborn, unrelenting will. My parents' absence didn't diminish my accomplishment. In a strange way, it magnified it. I had done this on my own. I walked off the stage, shook a few more hands, and returned to my seat, clutching my diploma. I was no longer just Elena. I was Dr. Vance. The title felt like armor. After the ceremony, as the auditorium spilled out into the sunlit courtyard, I was swept up in a flurry of hugs from my friends. "We did it!" we all yelled, tossing our caps in the air in a clumsy, joyous explosion. For a while, I let myself be carried by their happiness, posing for pictures, laughing at their jokes. But eventually, they all peeled off to join their waiting families for celebratory lunches and dinners. Soon, I was standing alone, my cap back on my head, my diploma in its heavy folder. The crowd was thinning. The day was moving on. I felt a pang of the earlier loneliness return, and I reached for my phone, not expecting anything, but needing the familiar anchor of it in my hand. And then it rang. My heart leaped, a stupid, reflexive jolt of hope. But the name on the screen wasn't Mom or Dad. It was Uncle Ben. I answered, my voice thick with emotion. "Hello. Dr. Alainavance, I presume?" His voice boomed, so full of pride it felt like a physical embrace. Tears I hadn't allowed myself to cry all day sprang to my eyes. "That's me," I managed to choke out. "I am so ridiculously proud of you, I can barely stand it," he said, and I could hear the genuine emotion in his voice. "I'm sorry I couldn't be there today, kid. A last-minute issue with a supplier on a big project. But I've been thinking about you all morning. Did you walk? Did you get your hood?" "I did," I said, swiping at a tear rolling down my cheek. "It's over. I'm officially a doctor." "I knew you would be," he said, his voice softening. "From the day you got that toy doctor's kit for your 7th birthday and performed surgery on all your stuffed animals, I knew. You have the heart for it, Elena. And you have the steel. I know about your parents. Your mom let it slip last week. I gave her an earful, believe me. For what it's worth, I'm furious at them, but I'm 10 times prouder of you. You did this. Don't ever forget that." His words were everything I had needed to hear. They were the validation I had craved, coming from the one person whose belief had never wavered. Standing there alone on the emptying campus, I didn't feel lonely anymore. I felt seen. "Thank you, Uncle Ben," I whispered. "That means more than you know." "We'll celebrate properly when you're settled in your new city," he promised. "Tonight, you go have a nice dinner, order the most expensive thing on the menu, and send me the bill. Doctor's orders." I laughed a real genuine laugh. I can do that. When we hung up, I stood a little taller. My triumph wasn't lonely after all. It was witnessed. It was celebrated. Maybe not by the people who were supposed to be there, but by the person who had always been there. And that, I was beginning to realize, was more than enough. The few days following graduation were a strange limbo. The crushing weight of school was gone, but the heavy responsibility of my residency hadn't yet begun. I spent my time packing up my apartment, a slow, methodical process of sorting through 8 years of my life. I donated stacks of textbooks that had once been my constant companions and threw away piles of meticulously organized notes. It felt like shedding a skin. With each box I taped shut, I felt lighter, more untethered from the person I had been. I hadn't heard a word from my family. A part of me, the masochistic part, checked my phone obsessively for the first day or two. I imagined a postcard arriving from some port of call with a picture of a dolphin on it and a trite message. "Wish you were here," but there was nothing. Just a complete and total silence that was, in its own way, more honest than any of their excuses. They were on their cruise, living in their world, and I was in mine. The gulf between us felt wider than any ocean. I was trying to accept it, to file it away as the final chapter in a long, disappointing story. I had lunch with my friends, talked to Uncle Ben on the phone again, and focused on the logistics of my move. I was building a new life, and I told myself that it was better to build it on a foundation of reality, not on the crumbling wreckage of my expectations for my family. On Wednesday afternoon, 4 days after graduation, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from a number I didn't recognize, but the preview showed an image attachment. Curious, I opened it. It was a photo of a massive billboard, stark against a bright blue sky, and on the billboard was my face. It was a professional photograph Uncle Ben had insisted I take a few months prior, the one he'd said was for posterity. In it, I was wearing my white coat, a stethoscope draped around my neck, smiling a genuine, hopeful smile. My face, 20 feet high, looked out over a busy 6-lane highway. In huge, bold letters next to my image, the billboard read, "Congratulations, Dr. Alana. Your hard work and dedication are an inspiration. We are so proud of you." I stared at my phone, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. A billboard of me? It was the most gloriously, absurdly over-the-top thing I had ever seen. My first thought was that it was a prank. A very elaborate, very expensive prank. Then, another text came through, this time from a number I did recognize. It was my sister, Chloe. Her text wasn't a question or a congratulations. It was just the same photo, followed by a single sentence. "What did you do?" What did I do? The accusation in her tone was unmistakable, as if I was somehow responsible for this public spectacle. I was about to type a confused reply when my phone started ringing. It was Uncle Ben. I answered, still completely bewildered. "Uncle Ben, did you see this? Someone put my face on a billboard. He let out a booming laugh that seemed to shake the phone. Yeah, kid, that someone was me. I sank onto the arm of my sofa, speechless. You did this. Why? Why? He repeated, his voice filled with a righteous indignation that I knew well. Because your parents decided a tan was more important than your life's work, because they couldn't be bothered to show up. I figured if they weren't going to celebrate you, then the whole damn city was going to. I rented it for a month. It's right on the main artery, the one your father takes to work every single day. The one your mother takes to her precious country club. The one all their friends and neighbors drive on. A wave of understanding, so sharp and clear it made me dizzy, washed over me. This wasn't just a celebration. This was a statement. It was a silent, public rebuke. Uncle Ben hadn't just celebrated my success. He had shown a giant, unmissable spotlight on my parents' failure to do so. He had taken their private neglect and made it public knowledge without ever saying a negative word. The message on the billboard was entirely positive, which made it all the more damning. It preemptively answered the question everyone who knew them would ask. Wow, your daughter is a doctor. You must be so proud. The billboard screamed, yes, you should be proud. Why aren't you? Oh my God, Uncle Ben, I breathed, a hysterical laugh bubbling up in my chest. You're insane. I'm proud, he corrected me, his voice firm. There's a difference. People should know what you accomplished. And if your family has a problem with being publicly associated with their brilliant, successful daughter, well, that's a them problem, not a you problem. Chloe's text suddenly made perfect sense. What did you do? She thought I had done this to shame them, to get back at them. The idea was so foreign to my nature that it hadn't even occurred to me. But for them, for a family so obsessed with image and perception, this public display was a direct attack on their carefully constructed facade. It exposed them. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It was an act of such audacious, defiant love that it took my breath away. He had seen my hurt, and instead of just offering quiet sympathy, he'd built a monument to my success. He hadn't just told me he was pro. He had announced it to the world. As I was trying to thank him, my phone beeped with another incoming call. It was my mother. I let it go to voicemail. A second later, it rang again. My father. I ignored that one, too. Then a string of texts began to pour in. From Chloe, Mom is freaking out. You need to call her. Now. From my dad, Elena, call me immediately. This is not funny. From my mother, Elena Michelle Vance, I don't know what kind of cruel game you're playing, but you have embarrassed this entire family. Call me this instant. I read the messages out loud to Uncle Ben, my voice trembling with a mixture of shock and a strange, giddy sense of vindication. He just chuckled, a low, satisfied rumble. Let 'em stew, he said. They've got some thinking to do. You just enjoy your moment, Doc, you earned it. After we hung up, I looked at the picture of the billboard again. I saw my own smiling face, 20 feet tall, a beacon of an achievement they had tried to ignore. It was surreal. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I had all the power. They had started this by thinking I was small, that my dreams were insignificant. And now, thanks to my crazy, wonderful uncle, my success was literally larger than life. And they had no idea what to do. The silence was broken. And that's when they started calling. My phone became a relentless beacon of my family's panic. For the rest of the afternoon and into the evening, it buzzed and chimed with a desperate, frantic energy I had never witnessed from them before. Calls from my mother, my father, and Chloe came in one after another. When I ignored them, they cascaded into my voicemail, each message more agitated than the last. Elena, it's your father. People are calling. My boss mentioned it. He thought it was a lovely gesture. I didn't know what to say. Call us back. Lainey, it's Chloe. My friends are all sending me pictures of it. Is this supposed to be some kind of joke? It's really not cool. Elena Michelle, this is your mother. This has gone far enough. You are making a public spectacle and humiliating us. Do you have any idea how this looks? Mrs. Henderson from next door called to congratulate me. It was deeply, deeply awkward. Take it down. Now. Take it down, as if I had a magic remote control for highway billboards. The sheer absurdity of it all was breathtaking. For days, I had been a nonentity, a ghost they could conveniently forget while they soaked up the sun. Now, because their social circle was buzzing, I was suddenly the center of their universe, the cause of their profound distress. Their panic had nothing to do with missing my graduation and everything to do with the fact that other people knew they had. My uncle's gambit had worked more perfectly than either of us could have imagined. He hadn't attacked them, he had simply held up a mirror, and they were horrified by their own reflection. I let them call. I put my phone on silent and continued packing, a grim satisfaction settling over me. With every box I taped shut, I felt more detached from their chaos. This was their mess, born from their choices. I refused to be drawn into it. That evening, I ordered myself a pizza and opened a bottle of wine Uncle Ben had sent me. As I sat on the floor of my half-empty living room, I listened to the voicemails again, this time with a clinical detachment. I wasn't the wounded daughter anymore. I was a doctor diagnosing a symptom. The symptom was panic. The disease was a terminal case of prioritizing public perception over private integrity. Finally, around 9 o'clock, after the 12th missed call in 2 hours, I decided I was ready. I took a deep breath, took a sip of wine, and when my mother's name flashed on the screen again, I answered. "Hello, Mom." "Elena," she practically shrieked, her voice tight with fury. "Finally, what on earth do you think you're doing? Why would you do this to us?" The immediate accusation, the total lack of self-awareness, was almost impressive. "Do what exactly?" I asked, my voice calm and even. "Don't play dumb with me. The billboard. You put up a giant picture of yourself on the busiest highway in the state to shame us. Your father is mortified. I had to lie to 3 different people today, Elena." "Lie." "I told them we had a family emergency and couldn't make the ceremony, but that we were so proud. You've put us in an impossible position." I let her words hang in the air. I could hear my father muttering in the background, feeding her lines. "First of all," I said, my voice like ice, "I didn't put up the billboard. Uncle Ben did. He did it because he was proud of me, a concept that seems to be completely foreign to you. And second, the only person who put you in an impossible position is you." There was a stunned silence on the other end. I had never, ever taken this tone with her. "Your Uncle Ben," she stammered. "Why would he do something so tacky?" "He did it because he loves me," I said plainly. "He did it because he knows what it took for me to get through the last 8 years. He did it because my own parents chose a last-minute cruise over the single biggest accomplishment of my life. He thought I deserved to be celebrated, even if my own family disagreed." "It wasn't a last-minute cruise," she shot back, her voice defensive. "The deal was just too good to pass up." "You booked it after you got my invitation, Mom. You lied. But that's not even the worst part, is it?" I leaned forward, my voice dropping. "The worst part is what you said to me. The real reason you felt so comfortable booking that trip." I could hear her breath catch. She knew what was coming. "You didn't think I'd make it," I said, the words tasting like ash. "You told me. You admitted that you had so little faith in me, so little regard for my ambition, that you didn't even think I would graduate. After all this time, after everything I've done, you still saw me as a failure waiting to happen, didn't you?" The line was silent, except for her shaky breathing. My father's background murmuring had stopped. "So, let me be very clear," I continued, feeling a lifetime of repressed frustration pouring out of me in a controlled, steady stream. "You are not embarrassed because of a billboard. You are embarrassed because the billboard tells a happy story, and it makes people ask you questions that you can't answer honestly. You can't say, 'Oh yes, we're so proud, but we decided to go snorkeling instead of watching her become a doctor.' You can't say, 'We missed it because we never thought she had it in her.' So you have to lie. That discomfort you're feeling right now, that is not my fault. That is the consequence of your own actions. You are not the victim here. You are the architect of your own embarrassment." I paused, letting it all sink in. I had never spoken so many true, unfiltered words to her in my life. "Elena," my father's voice finally came on the line, hesitant and weak. Your mother is very upset. I'm sure she is, I said flatly. Upset that she got caught. Upset that her perfect family image has a crack in it. Are either of you upset that you broke your daughter's heart? Are you upset that you weren't there? Or is this all just about how it looks? More silence. That was the answer. It was always about how things looked. The perfect house, the successful husband, the influencer daughter with her thousands of followers, and the other one, the one who was a bit too much trouble, the one they kept in the background. The billboard is staying up for a month, I informed them, my tone final. So I suggest you get used to it. Maybe come up with a better story. Or, and this is just a wild idea, you could try telling the truth. But I imagine that's a bit too much to ask for. Before either of them could respond, before they could pivot to apologies that I knew would be as hollow as their excuses, I said, I have to go. I'm packing for my new life. The one I built for myself. And with that, I ended the call. My hand was trembling slightly, but my heart was steady. The confrontation hadn't been fiery or dramatic, it had been precise. It was a surgical removal of a toxic, festering wound. For the first time, I felt clean. They knew the truth, not just about the billboard, but about everything. The power dynamic had shifted irrevocably. They could no longer hide behind their quiet dismissiveness. Their neglect was now on display for the world to see, lit up on a highway 20 feet tall. The aftermath of the confrontation was not an explosion, but a slow, awkward fizzle. The frantic calls stopped. In their place came a series of hesitant, wounded text messages. Chloe sent a long, rambling message about how I had made things weird for everyone and how Uncle Ben had no right to interfere. She didn't get it, and I knew she never would. Her entire life had been cushioned by our parents' adoration. She couldn't comprehend a world in which their attention wasn't a given. I replied with a simple, I wish you the best, Chloe, and left it at that. Arguing would be pointless. My father sent a short, stilted text a day later. I'm sorry your feelings were hurt. That was not our intention. It was a classic non-apology, focusing on my reaction rather than their action. It was the best he could do, and I accepted it for what it was. A white flag from a man who would always choose the path of least resistance. My mother remained silent for 3 whole days. I imagined her at home, fuming, caught between her anger at being exposed and the dawning, uncomfortable realization that I was no longer playing my assigned role. The call finally came on a Saturday morning, as I was loading the last of my boxes into a moving truck. I let it ring twice before answering, determined to keep the newfound control I had established. Hello. Elena, her voice was different. The shrill anger was gone, replaced by subdued, almost fragile tone. Your father and we've been talking. I waited, saying nothing, just the sound of the wind whistling past the open door of the truck. The cruise, she started, then stopped. She took a breath. We were wrong. It was a mistake. We should have been there. It was the closest I would ever get to a real apology, and I recognized it as such. It was still motivated by shame, I was sure, but there was a flicker of something else in her voice. Regret. Maybe. Yes, I said, my voice neutral. You should have. We'd like to. We want to make it up to you, she said, the words coming out in a rush. We want to come visit after you're settled. We can take you out for a proper celebration dinner. We can see your new apartment, your new hospital. Her words painted a picture of the family I had always wanted, the one that showed up and showed interest. A year ago, I would have leaped at the offer, filled with a desperate, grateful hope. But now, I saw it for what it was, an attempt to smooth things over, to paste over the cracks in the facade and pretend they had never existed. They wanted to go back to normal. But their normal had been toxic for me, and I was done with it. I appreciate the offer, Mom, I said, and I was surprised to find that I meant it. The offer, however flawed, was a step. But I'm going to need some space, a lot of it. My residency is going to be incredibly demanding. I need to focus on my work, on building my life here. Oh, she said, her voice small, I see. Our relationship isn't something we can fix with a dinner, I continued, choosing my words with care. It's been broken for a long time. Maybe it can be rebuilt, but it's going to be different. It's going to be on new terms. It's going to have to be honest. I let that last word hang in the air. Honest, the one thing we had never been. I'll call you when I'm ready, I finished. But you have to let me be the one to do it. No more surprise visits, no more pressuring me to make you feel better about your choices. The ball is in my court now. It was the hardest thing I'd ever said to her, but it was also the most necessary. I was drawing a boundary, not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. For our relationship to have any chance at a future, it had to be one where I was no longer the one constantly seeking, constantly accommodating, constantly being disappointed. To her credit, she just said, "Okay, Elena, I understand." When I hung up the phone, a profound sense of peace settled over me. It wasn't the triumphant thrill of victory, but the quiet, steady calm of closure. I hadn't banished my family from my life, but I had changed the terms of engagement. I had taken back my power. A week later, I was in my new city, my new apartment a chaotic mess of half-unpacked boxes. My first day at the hospital was looming, and I was a nervous wreck, but it was a good kind of nervous. It was the thrill of a new beginning. That evening, my doorbell rang. It was Uncle Ben, holding 2 large pizzas and a 6-pack of craft beer. "Thought you could use some help unpacking, Doc," he said with a wide grin. We sat on the floor, surrounded by boxes, eating pizza and talking for hours. He told me about the fallout from the Billboard, how my parents had become recluses for a week, how my father had sheepishly admitted to a colleague that he'd messed up. I found I didn't care. Their drama was theirs to manage. "I'm really proud of you, kid," Uncle Ben said, raising his bottle in a toast. "Not just for the doctor thing, for standing up for yourself. That's harder than any board exam." I smiled, a real unburdened smile. I had a good teacher. Looking around at the life I was about to build, I knew that things would be okay. My worth wasn't something to be granted by others. It was something I had forged myself in the quiet hours of study and the loud, chaotic halls of the hospital. My family might never fully understand, and that was all right. I had stopped trying to be the daughter they wanted and had finally become the woman I was meant to be. My future was a blank page, and for the first time, I was the only one holding the pen. To the audience, maybe my story resonates with you. Maybe you've also felt unseen by the people who were supposed to see you most clearly. It's a painful place to be, to feel like you're shouting into a void, celebrating your victories in a silent room. What I've learned is that you cannot force people to value you. You cannot beg for their belief. True validation is a fire you build within yourself. It's about recognizing your own strength, celebrating your own triumphs, and finding your Uncle Ben, the people who show up not because of obligation, but because they genuinely delight in your light. Sometimes, the family you choose is the one that truly matters. So, to anyone out there feeling invisible, please know this. Your accomplishments are real, your dreams are valid, and you are worthy of celebration. Don't wait for others to see it. See it for yourself.